Let's do this thing. Okay, so the last time I recorded a video was weeks and weeks and weeks ago. It was before the announcement of Dawn of War 4 and before the announcement of Total War 40K. So, it's been a minute. But on the more, I guess the personal reason is I had to finish out the semester and it just got really busy. But I am now a private pilot, so that's cool. And then I'm on to instrument next semester. We'll see what happens. But yeah, this video is going to be on Darkness Eternal, like the anthology. I just wanted to do short stories before diving into whatever the next book I want to do is. I was thinking Archmagos, but I don't think I'm leaning towards actually Reign of Iron because I really like that book. And I also just want an excuse to read it again. And I also want an excuse to read the Priests, Lords, and Gods of Mars, like, trilogy. That's on the docket. But, yeah, before I waste any more time, let's begin. So, this one's going to be a little bit different. The format's going to change because it's going to be like Eras of Ruin, the last anthology I did, because there's just not enough. Like, each short story is only like an hour-ish. So it wouldn't make sense to like the review video to be, for each one to be an hour long, because then you just might as well read the story. So yeah, each one is going to have just a basic breakdown of summary and review. It's not going to have like a very comprehensive like lore, who's it for, characters, and then like a deep explanatory for each one. It's just going to be your basic summary and review, and then I'm just going to move on to the next one, and et cetera, et cetera. The only time I'm going to kind of break from that is the very first one, called 1 Million Years, just because like enough happened that I did want to kind of talk about it. But yeah, the rest, there's like 13 anthologies. There's 13 stories inside of this single anthology. But yeah, okay, so without further ado, 1 Million Years by Nate Crowley. Narrator is Michael Geary. So yeah, anyway, starting with the summary and also the review, and then I'll move into the lore / things that I needed to talk about. So the summary is, it's a Necron story that takes place on a vessel called 1 Million Years. It's a Harvest class, Messec class Dawn Swallower, which is fancy speak for it's a giant ship that goes into suns and then harvests sun things and then brings it back to the dynasty so that they can use the sun stuff for sun reasons. The main POV character we follow, her name is Prey. Prey is serving under another Necron called Baknafet, a much famed Necron within the dynastic order, for her superb skill at voidfaring. Yet the 1 Million Years is not alone, and it must defend itself. For as short as it is, the story is well told. It has great flow and knows how to keep the ball rolling. There's no wasted scene, which is a departure from some of the long-form Black Library books that I read. The quote, "If I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter," comes to mind with a lot of like the 12, 14, and 16-hour like books that are just like one solid story and not just an anthology. They just, the padding is real. Some other things that I liked seeing was a further exploration into how Necron society and its hierarchy actually functions when things go wrong. So like we know that it's like a really strict, like like every single time you have a conversation, there's like certain things you need to do before even speaking certain words. And there's like gestural stuff that goes with like the oral stuff, and like even down to like what you wear during certain situations. Like they can like literally change their necrodermis depending on like what ceremonial thing is happening. So like they are a very hierarchical, like class oriented society, but it's really interesting to see when like that hierarchy breaks down, because there's like a break in the chain, how Necrons like think and what actually happens, which this book kind of goes into, because the leadership like system kind of goes wrong. There's also Leagues of Votann in this, which is awesome. Part of me doesn't like the way the story incorporated them. We already don't know a lot about them. So for the Necrons to also be doing like the Tau thing, where they treat the kin in a very alien way, only describing aspects of what they look like and what their ships are sort of shaped as they, like, as basically they stay really vague, and it falls kind of a bit flat when I already don't know anything about the kin, because they like legit they only have one book so far, and I know they have models, so it's like, hey man, just look at the models. But it's like, okay, or you could just describe them in detail and like, yeah, because like in the Tau books, when they like in the like way back, because now they just call stuff what it is because it's like they're not new to the lore. But like when earlier Tau books, they would like describe a dreadnought, but they wouldn't call it a dreadnought. They would just be like this big lumbering metallic thing that was thousands of years old, and then you'd just be like, oh, and you'd finally kind of put together what they were describing, and they'd just be like, oh, that's a dreadnought. They're fighting a dreadnought. Or they would like describe a titan that they were seeing for the first time, and they were just like, oh my god, what the hell is that? It's like a big walking building. Why is it bipedal? And then you'd be like, oh, that's a titan. So yeah, they do the similar thing, but with the kin, which like if you've never been introduced to the kin, I mean, maybe it's just a taste thing. I would have liked if they just like gave what they were called, because like I don't know, find an excuse, be like, we tapped their data bank on their ship, and now we know all the titles that they call themselves, or something like that. Anyways, my point is they're already obscure, so treating them like they're obscure and alien is just like a little, it just goes a step too far. Anyway, nitpicks aside, I did really like this book, like, or this short story. It was definitely one of the better ones, and it's the reason why I'm gonna go into the lore a little bit. Like, and by lore I mean there's some stuff that they talk about that I'm like, what? So for instance, they mention feral infant Catan because they're harvesting from the inside of a sun, and they don't really go farther than that. They just kind of name drop it, and I know it's key jangling, but still really cool aspect of like the setting to kind of think about like new Catan getting birthed. And also so many questions. Please explain. Like, it's ultimately, this is pretty much all I have to say about it, because the book or the story doesn't actually dig into this. But like what? Like, is this how Catan are born? Like, how does that even work? But yeah, anyway, moving on. The kin are given an outside perspective explanation, and their Votan SDC AI are like commented on. It's also a passing thing. Like, a lot of this stuff is just in passing. Like, if anyone knows what machine intelligences are and like can comment on them, the Necrons do, because that's like their whole shtick. It's interesting though because they refer to them as senescent AI, which really shows how much these Votan constructs have deteriorated over the years that they have been active. The fact that these machine intelligences have been inactive for thousands of years is impressive enough, and really adds weight to how much humanity has lost from its peak in the golden age of technology. A subject that I very much wish had more coverage, because it's such an incredible like time, just the golden age of technology in itself. Like, every time we see any kind of even like a vestige of what's going on, or like a myth, like it's just so cool. Like, even in the Gaunt's Ghosts, they discover like just a minor random manufactory place that's just housing some men of iron, and that is cool enough. And that, just to think that that was just like, oh yeah, that was just like a building. It's like, okay, well, can we open this up? Can we have some books in the golden age of technology? Like, we have perpetuals in the setting. We can just, there you go, that's our main character. But yeah, I don't think they'll ever do that, because I just don't think that the like G-Dubs wants to elaborate and demystify their setting. My last holdout is I just wish that the Dark Mechanicum like had learned to replicate the Man of Iron gifted to them at the end of Genefather, instead of using it for spoilers. They summon Vashtor in Archmagos, so yeah, that's cool. But I also kind of wish that they had just like made an army of Iron Men, and then we could have had a range of Dark Mechanicum finally. That would have been cooler. But you know, seeing more of Vashtor is pretty neat. I'll stick that like idea of having a range of Men of Iron kind of like in the dark place where I keep my hope for more lore on Fabius Bile's new men. The last thing I think I want to talk about is the younger the Necron tier are before biotransference, the less ordeal being a Necron is. So like, I'm referring to the actual story itself. Prey, like, it like dies, right, and then has to, it's a Necron, so she comes back, gets reassembled, and then her like data is like transferred back into the body, and then like for a second she has to like kind of calm down her like lizard brain part that's like, oh my god, where's our limbs, where's our lungs, we can't breathe. But she's just like really easily able to do that. And the implication is when she underwent biotransference, she was like super tiny. She was like a very young, one of the youngest to go through biotransference. So she like basically wasn't used to her own body. And then she got transferred into this robot body, and now like she has a much easier time dealing with, you know, the flare virus. Because that's kind of where it comes from, is like I need to consume meat to make myself more comfortable in my own body. I don't know why that makes sense, but that is the lore. Anyways, the older you are, it seems that you need a distraction or an obsession as a cover for the fact that a part of of your brain isn't connecting with a physical body, nervous system, and getting that feedback from an organic body anymore. That all being said, it's still up in the air whether the flare virus is like a curse from the death of a Catan, or if it's just a biological reaction from a living like being trapped in a machine. So as a tangent, the Mechanicus are attempting biotransference, but with like extra steps. It's not like, I don't think the Mechanicus knows this, or they even address it or talk about it, but like that is what they're doing. Because like every time a Mechanicus, or not every time, but like there are several times that I could actually, you know, like anecdotally bring up of like Mechanicus talking to Necron cryptex, and then the cryptex being like, oh, you guys are just trying to become a machine. Like, you know, that's what replacing all of your limbs eventually is going to lead to. Or not limbs, but like your entire body once you replace it all. They're just like, that's what we did. You guys are just doing it in a weirder way. And then the Mechanicus are like, nuh-uh, we're not doing that. It's like, yeah, you are. What are you doing? What are you talking about? Which makes sense, I guess, because they have that void dragon chilling in Mars. But anyways, they don't seem to have the same issue with losing their minds from becoming more and more machine than human. So the big difference, though, is that the Mechanicus is still like nominally human, with at least a small part of them being organic. But like I can't help to think that an Archmagos or even just a Magos would have like even more of a problem with phantom limb syndrome at the very, very least. But like they just don't. Which maybe it's just like a convenient thing that they can just move past. Like the author is just like, they lobotomized that part of the brain. They just don't care, because they do that a lot with like the fear response or something like that. They just make like a passing comment of like, yes, he's unafraid because he just is. And I'm like, great argument, awesome, that settles it. So yeah, there's also an Iron Hands book that came out a bit ago called Wrath of Iron, which is like, for me, hands down, like the best Iron Hands like representation I've ever read in a Black Library catalog of books. The reason I bring it up, though, is because a few of them have this idea or question, and like a few of like the actual Iron Hands themselves have this idea or question of what happens when you've replaced all of your flesh with machine parts, because like ultimately that's their goal, because like the flesh is weak, so let's just keep replacing bits with machine parts, except they work alongside, you know, the AdMech, and they are like, hey, at least a little bit of you has to be human, so we're only going to replace what you need. There's more than a few of them that are like getting close to you know, having every single part of them replaced, and that's the question, is like, what happens when you do that? The other things that is like a recurring theme is the actual struggle of losing the human parts of both psyche or like emotion and physical loss of limbs and organs. Like it's a great exploration of the overlapping of like human experience and technology. Great book, very much recommend. Maybe I'll do it on the channel someday, but you know, Reign of Iron calls. If Space Marines are struggling with like a loss of humanity, then I would expect to see Mechanicus Tech Priests to also be struggling. So to loop it back to Necrons, if I had to plant my flag on whether or not the flare virus is a Catan curse or like a knock-on effect of becoming suddenly fully mechanical, I would say like it's a natural thing, with the caveat being that the flare virus is something completely different, because there are obvious unexplainable things that like flares can do. Like they have their own dimension, for just like a single example. Like they obviously, there is something going on with becoming a flare, but I think that the initial like, oh god, where's my arms, is something else. but it kind of leads into the Flare virus, if that makes sense. But I'm also going to drop this book because we're moving on to The Altar of Maws. I keep saying book. I should really just accept that it's a book and move on, but I will fight myself and try and say story because it's an anthology and we're reading a book made up of shorter, tiny stories. Anyways, Altar of Maws, the longest story in this anthology. I'm going to read how this book, oh my god, the story starts, and then I'll move into the summary and review. And this one's not going to have any lore, just because it doesn't really, it's a good old-fashioned horror romp, and it doesn't really have a lot to like dig into as far as like the entire setting goes. So I'm just going to read how it starts, and then, because I really like how it starts, and then I'll just go into like my own summary and review, even though I kind of gave it away already, but whatever. So Chapter 1, in ages past, the Sathla, who are descended from this ailing world's human colonists, consorted with many abominations, both primordial and preternatural. The facts of their corruptions have degraded into fables alongside their once vibrant civilization. But such tales bear a kernel of truth. They are a warning to the wise and a lure to those who seek darker wisdom. Few are as obscure, yet disturbing, as the myth of the sunken Maw, a hidden lake that repeatedly serves as a crucible for unspeakable rites. I never found this malign place, but I suspect its hunger persists. Once awoken, such appetites are rarely sated. From Crossing the Mire World, the Requiem Infernal. Yeah, and that's how it starts. It's really cool. It really sets the tone. It's such an atmospheric book. But yeah, anyway, so Altar of Maws is a visceral exploration of the effects of doubt, self-loathing, and the unknown on those unlucky enough to be stationed on the planet of Phaedra. Nurgle's roots run deep, and not much is immune to its touch. The Tau of the Wintertide Concordance have come to the planet, and its people known as the Sathla into the Tau-Va. Yet it isn't the wider conflict that the story is about, yet instead the small scale of only some hover barges patrolling a mysterious lake. And, you know, the people staffing, like, stationed on those barges. The small scale allows for the unique writing style of Peter Fehavari to really shine. The wording is purposeful and descriptive enough to see where these characters are and know what they're thinking or feeling in every scene. Justifications and purpose is plain and well thought out. Survival is not guaranteed, since none of these characters are important enough to rate plot armor, which adds to the suspense and stakes to the story. It does a great job at like building the atmosphere and the stakes. One thing I really liked was the representation of both the Nurgle followers in their descriptions and actions, as well as the Tau. I have a soft spot for the Death Guard. However, it isn't often that their true, like, disgusting visage and capabilities are so artfully and skillfully given shape. For the Tau, it's great to see how they fare under like such bleak and uncompromising circumstances. The cons here, since I realize I have done nothing but praise the story, is that it is inconsequential and unconnected to anything other than just the fact it is part of the setting of 40K. So if you aren't a fan of like not having any kind of like real connection with characters or not having any kind of greater stakes at play, like galactically speaking, or to any other part of the setting, then this will fall like really flat, since it's like the atmosphere is pretty much what this book relies on to keep you engaged. Another thing is that this author, I find the people that read Peter Fehavari's books, they either really like it or they hate it, because he doesn't tend to write in like a straightforward way. Much of his writing demands like real engagement. Like you cannot just like turn the book on and like just, you know, like paint, or like it's something you actually have to like really go into like fully and immerse yourself in, or else you're just going to be like, I have no idea what's going on, because it's hard to describe. It's just confusing if you're not paying attention. Like character motives are very like human in a way where they like make mistakes. So when things are said, you don't know if it's true unless you're kind of picking up on other stuff, like unless you know it's true. Because there's another book he read called The Spiral Dawn, where it's like there's some people that don't know like what a gene stealer is, So they see a gene stealer and they're like, it's a demon. And then they survive the encounter and go to the commissar, and he's like, we saw demons. And then there's a priest that's like, okay, cool, it's a demon hunting mission. And then we find out like later that the commissar is actually like part of the Inquisition, and he knows that it's a gene stealer cult, but he's keeping it on the down low because he doesn't want to scare people. And he also knows that not a lot of people actually know what a gene stealer cult is. And like then he'd have to describe like what a Xenos is. So it kind of plays with the whole like not everybody's like an omniscient like person of the setting, where like there's just the people be dumb is essentially how it works. And not everything that like not all the dialogue that is exposition is actually helpful, and most times it's actually not helpful, and you have to know about the setting to kind of pick apart what the dialogue just said, to be like, oh well, that guy just lied because like that's not even a thing in the setting. So yeah, like some people just kind of don't like his writing because it's like a lot of work, because you're like, he's lying straight to my face. Exposition's not even exposition. What is happening? But yeah, so I loved it. It was great. I really like it. It's an hour and a half long. Chow versus Nurgle is always very interesting. So because they don't really run into the warpy shenanigans very often, but in the current setting, they kind of are, which is really fun. The Light of the Emperor by Darius Hinks, also narrated by Michael Geary. Pilgrim ends up striking a conversation with Voltus. She's full of conviction, and her religious fervor makes her a bit less fearful of an Astartes. This lack of fear enables her to criticize his efforts to try and understand the alien. After all, it is better for one to fear the alien, hate the alien, and kill the alien. The word of the Emperor is all the guidance that is needed in life. Ultimately, this book is about the remnant shards of secular belief that some in the Imperium still hold to, and the religious zealotry that permeates the vast majority of the rest that reside within. While the story is very short, I think that it does a good job at drawing attention to the state of a standard Imperial citizen in the setting, what their beliefs are, how they act, what drives them, how the lack of education and the buildup of religious dogma over thousands of years can lead to an entrenchment in backward ideals. The dialogue that Darius Hinks uses is a great tool at allowing these two viewpoints to interact with each other as well. The Tyranids are given a status of threat that is always good to see. Sometimes they can feel pretty toothless compared to how they are supposedly positioned as a galaxy-wide threat. I will say where this story falls a bit short is in the descriptiveness of what is going on. Not that it is unintelligible. That's ironic. More like it is like it clearly isn't the focus. Like the description of like the environment, the people, the Tyranid, like just describing things in general just isn't the focus of the actual story. The dialogue is. So it comes off as more sterile and average, which doesn't help what happens in the story come to a focus clearly in your head. It's also clear that the events of the story are a vehicle for like the actual theme, which I get is this like it's like a fact of any story. Any story uses the words as a vehicle. Like the story itself is just a vehicle for the theme. I understand that my criticism makes no sense, but it's particularly evident here since the dialogue is so on the nose with what the story is trying to say. Like the theme is parallel to like everything that happens, to the point where you're like, man, there really is nothing else going on. You might as well tell us like, hey man, religion bad. So it's decent overall and only about 30-ish minutes. I won't go like recommending it, but I also wouldn't go as far as to say it's a waste of time either. Like it's a solid story, and it's not like the worst inclusion into this. The Tyranids are also pretty great. Anyway, moving on. The Devouring Void by Danny Weir. Narrator is Michael Geary. So Jamie Bonita is an Inquisitor, and we get introduced to him as he is praying to the Emperor. His meditations are disturbed when an alarm blares to life. The black ship's captain so they are on a black ship. Yes, they are on a black ship. The captain orders crew to stations and alerts everyone that they are out of the warp and under attack. Particular attention is needed to guard one of the prisoners in the hold of the ship. The prisoner aforementioned is Serco. He's the high-value prisoner the Inquisitor is personally involved with. And antagonists go, Serco is actually pretty great. His character being a lifelong target of the Inquisitors and The unique lifeline that he's able to offer when things get dangerous immediately gets my attention. That lifeline being dubious offers of salvation at the cost of Benita's oath to the Emperor and possibly being tainted by chaos. Oftentimes, the nature of black ships draws the attention of the warp, since its cargo is so physically charged, and the veil between the warp and real space has never been weaker, like galaxy-wide. Yeah. Yet the galaxy is vast, and the Tyranids hunger in the void. The Hive Fleet's influence is the cause of the ship dropping out of the warp. Inquisitor Benita and his retinue must defend the ship and its cargo and ensure that they get back to Terra intact to feed the Astronomicon. There's not a lot to say about the story. It's like basically as linear as it gets, with a length that doesn't overstay its welcome. Descriptively, it isn't like dripping in style, but at least the atmosphere comes through well enough. The best part about the tale being told is how purposeful it is and how grim and desperate things get. Again, the Tyranids are given the opportunity to play that background unstoppable threat that is able to sweep away anything that challenges it. So the interplay of the characters trying to beg and bargain with each other as the defense of the ship progresses is a real highlight. Just like many short stories, and something I have already brought up in this video, is that none of the characters are recurring, so beyond the stated importance to the story itself, there's no real attachment to anybody or anything. The stakes are there, but the consequences might fall flat for those that find it hard to engage with a story where everyone is a stranger, and you don't get much time to get attached, because, yeah, it's only like 40-ish minutes, so, like, you know, if you find it hard to, like, really form attachments, or you're, like, low on the empathy experience for, like, characters in stories, then this might be rough, because it's just kind of like, all right, well, am I supposed to feel something for these people? I do like the representation of the Inquisition in this. I like how this story can show just what situations an Inquisitor can get into, and how sometimes falling to chaos isn't as simple as just, like, reading the wrong book, or getting grandiose ideas about being more, like, specialer than all their peers, and somehow being the specialist chosen one that can control the warp, and, like, when everybody else can't, they're just like, but I can, because I'm the specialist of the special people. Like, sometimes an Inquisitor falls just, like, out of pure survival. They're just like, I don't want to die, so let's make a deal. So it's like, it's a good read. I do recommend it. It's pretty decent. Anyway, moving on to Own Worst Enemy by Denny Flowers. Narrator Helen Keeley. So Flight Commander Lucille Vanchard is back as the legendary pilot we have come to know well. Wing Commander Vagabond, who we do not know, is assigned to serve under her. Propagandist Isek and his eyes are also present to add the unique spin that Lucille's stories kind of bring to the setting, that of how propaganda affects and drives, like, aspects of the Imperium deeply. More specifically, the production of the Militarum's consistent stream of, like, recruits. As the saying goes, the blood of martyrs waters the seeds of the Imperium. This time around, Von Shard, Isek, and Vagabond are pitted against a new threat in the air that brings death to all those that have come against it so far. What is immediately different about the story compared to all the others so far is that we have familiar characters that have more than a couple books and stories behind them. The pacing is well done, and the message itself that the Imperium twists events to create martyrs. It needs to continue the recruitment of its masses into the never-ending wars it wages is solid. The dialogue is also very good. All of it sounds like humans actually talking to each other, which is, sadly, something of a high expectation these days, apparently. Where the story kind of falls short for me is in its reliance on tropes and archetypical characters to carry the narrative. I want to add that tropes in and of themselves are, as well as, tropes and archetypical characters are not inherently bad things. Tropes, especially, are, necessary aspects of stories in general. Tropes are such it's just a simple word to describe things commonly used in stories. That's it. So trope isn't like a stand-in for the word bad. If you didn't have tropes, you wouldn't have a story, is basically what I'm trying to say. It would literally be impossible to create a story, even telling a story, how your day was. You wouldn't be able to tell that without like probably bringing a trope into the picture. So yeah, the problem comes from an over reliance on these things to produce altogether far too predictable events, wherein if anything happens, you can immediately be able to predict what happens next, unless the author is able to subvert expectations. But then, as the reader, I just feel like the author is playing games at that point. Like if all they're doing is setting up a common trope and then subverting it, you're like, ah, yes, what is the subversion this time? Like I could never have guessed what just happened. So yeah, it isn't like that the story is bad necessarily. I'm just not on board with the writing style. Like again, there is an audience for this. People will like it. It's just not for me. Like even if you have my taste in like the reviews have been solid so far, like I'm not batting 100, I'm sure. Like this is probably solid because there's more than a few like Denny Flowers is a good author. So, just because I don't like it, give it a try. Arcady Pride is the next one by Justin D. Hill. Narrator is Colleen Prendergast. Trader Rock still burns in the distance. Minka Lesk and her squad are taking a well-deserved rest, and in that time are able to reflect. Drinking with Blanchez and Yedrin, the memories of life on Cadia bubble up on the surface. Or to the surface, not on the... Anyway, moving on. Learning more about the current state of Cadian's mindset, now long after the fall of their fortress home, goes a long way in gaining my interest in this story. I will admit that I haven't read any of Minka Lesk's books, so I can't elaborate on any small or large nods to previous books. On one hand, though, that didn't prevent me from getting something out of the story. I do enjoy the portrayal of how survival guilt affects the Cadians. Those rare survivors of the cataclysmic fight know what their loss brought to the wider galaxy, so survival feels like failure on top of the failure of not being able to save or defend Cadia. The guilt is different to the new Cadians, which are necessarily recruited to replace losses. For those that aren't from Cadia, they have to reconcile with the high bar that of being part of Cadian regiment means. Just basically, you got big boots to fill. The legacy is huge. You're not Cadian, you got to earn it, and you can't really earn it, so it's just a forever I'm sitting there, because you weren't even brought up on Cadia, so can you even call yourself Cadian? But you're part of a Cadian regiment serving alongside veterans who, some of them, fought on Cadia when it got destroyed. So there is that kind of friction developing in the new Cadian regiments of the current 42nd millennium after the fall, So yeah, bringing the setting down to human level is when 40k is best, and the Cadians are one of the more important groups to flesh out, and not only because it adds to the setting in a meaningful way. The con here is that nothing really happens. This is dialogue, just straight up people talking to each other. There's no action, there's no nothing. I mean, there is action, but it's not the action you'd expect. It's someone punching somebody else. So yeah, if dialogue doesn't really do it for you, then do skip this book or this story, because it is nothing but talking to each other. So yeah, if you don't want 30 minutes of characters talking to each other when you don't need this in your life, other than that, it's a decent short story, even if you aren't invested in Minka Lesk books. That's also to say you don't actually need to have read anything else, because you'll still get something out of it. Nightsider Imperialis. So author is Victoria Hayward, and the narrator is Gabrielle Nellis Payne. So Major Wolf Khan and her Night Shrikes go on a savior mission to recover a downed pilot. The best thing to do with a short story is to keep it simple, and this one is one of the simplest. That being said, if you don't something just above pop-up picture level in terms of complexity, this one probably won't be for you. It isn't often we see Catachans, much less given their perspective, so it's fun and refreshing. The surprising aspect to this story was the inclusion of a minor mutation, or a minor mutant, basically. It's usually an Ogren, or a Ratling, or a mutant that we know, like a Navigator, or an Astropath. But it's not very often that we just get minor mutations where it's hey, this guy's a Nightsider, and it's what is that? And then you get to find out what a Nightsider is. So it's pretty cool. I did like that. More than I should, probably. This is such a minor aspect where I'm hey guys, look, look at this incredibly non-important part of the setting, and then people are like, I don't care, and I'm like, it makes sense that you don't care because this really doesn't matter. But yeah, anyway, it's pretty fun. The Nightsiders are basically just humans that are mutated in like a certain way, um, or certain ways, because it's not even like a specific mutation. It's just kind of like they could have weird looking eyes, they could have like antenna, they could have like frills all over their face. Just any mutation that lets them like see in the dark or be more effective in the nighttime. So like all in an effort to basically, essentially, it implies that they've lived in the night for so long that they need these to like survive. So yeah, the Imperium uses them for like night world operations. They're like, here you go, you can do the thing, but you guys kind of suck because your eyes look weird and you're mutants. So yeah. On a side note, if you do want more of like Major Wolf Khan, she's in the book Death Worlder, which is good. It's very simple. If you like simple, then it's great. It's not a badly written book. I I'm just like a sucker for the more complex stuff. Not to sound all like douchey and like elitist, where I'm like, yes, I only read War and Peace and stuff that takes 8 decades to read. Like I don't know. Like it is a very linear tale, and the dialogue is very. I don't know. I need to stop because I feel like everything I say is like a weird like non-compliment but compliment, just a backhanded thing. Anyway, moving on. It's a good story. I like it. It's not like grade A amazing, but it is decent. It's solid. Moving forwards to A Forbidden Meal by Carrie Harris and narrated by Michael Geary. To be a Xenos in the 42nd millennium is to be unwelcome. Yet talent can always find pay, and when Skeeth's kin band are hired to track sicklefangs that have been killing around a mining town, the hunt is on. For recruit, killing is a special, like, core part of their culture. They are carnivores, and when they ingest meat, they can incorporate genetic traits from that kill into their own DNA. Now, I do want to add, like, I'm a little non-smart when it comes to Kroot. Um, I think it's just any biological matter. They just do it with meat more often. But I'm also not sure about that. I know that when they ingest things, they can incorporate stuff into their DNA. So when they eat a like it's dangerous to eat basically um, orc, but because I know orc isn't like full on meat, like they're also part fungus, and then it like does stuff to them when they eat orc. So they avoid eating orc because it's like, oh no, like I don't want to turn into something weird. Because if you read Prophet of the Wa, there's a Kroot like it's like wheeled in because it ate an orc, and now it like isn't even like a bipedal organism anymore. It's like this floating weird looking thing inside of a tank, and it's like kill me. It's not actually. It's having a great time, but yeah. So like I know, I guess there's implications that like Kroot can eat other stuff that isn't just meat. It's just like they're carnivores more often than not. So yeah. Anyway, they're hunting Sicklefang, whatever. Um, yeah, killing and eating something like a Sicklefang, which are a type of large cat, offers a varied set of opportunities for like changing aspects of Kroot bodies. The contract comes with a warning: the Sicklefangs have changed their hunting behavior, which can only mean one thing: another predator. It's a standout story. The plot is unique, and from a Kroot's perspective, which is also rare. It's also like written really well. The Kroot aren't just humans that look like aliens. They like actually are, written like a different species, which like humans as aliens kind of it I think it affects mostly Eldar in the setting. Like the Tau generally act like Tau, like you're like, ah, yes, you are not human. But like the Eldar, sometimes, man, they can come across as basically just humans with pointier ears, and I'm just like, man, you guys really need to act like aliens way more often. I know they're not very popular when it comes to like the lore because they are so boring, but like that's kind of what they are. So like, when they act human, that's also not great. Yeah. Anyway, the way they operate, what they value, down to what they fear, and like also what they consider taboo is just like all different. The dialogue is good, the pacing is good. The real only downside is the description and like atmosphere just like isn't there. So it's like eating something like butter noodles as opposed to like carbonara. Both are delicious, but one meal is like elevated by improving and adding a couple of new things to the dish. Not to use a really bad analogy, but like there you go. Like it's just the description in the atmosphere. It's not quite there. It feels like a story that's like on almost on training wheels, where it's like we're gonna get to the point. We're gonna get to A, and then we're gonna get to B, and we're gonna get to the C, and we don't need any of those frills. We don't need any of those luxury items like telling you what the cave smells like and how the characters feel and stuff. We just know we're in a cave, and it's like, all right, I know what a cave looks like, I guess. Um, so yeah. Anyways, moving on to Eradicant by R.S. Wilt. Narrator is Gabrielle Nellis Payne. So Medicae Adept Davilan, Trooper Durlo, Trooper Noel, and Tempester Traxor are all part of First Eradicant. It's a squad of Tempestus Scions, and the world is being invaded by World Eaters. A single regiment of the Tempestus Scions are here to reinforce the defending Imperial forces. They aren't here to go to the front lines and save the day, though. Instead, they are here to save the VIPs, namely Governor Mars Chizek. Woof. Yeah, those names are like landmines. He has important codes to keep the planet's infrastructure intact. It's your classic military squad run and gun story, complete with squad dialogue. If you ever played like Gears of War or like Republic Commando, or you've watched like The Pacific or like Saving Private Ryan, like you've heard the squad dialogue and the banter before. So it's tropey, but that doesn't diminish anything. I very much like how the tension gets built throughout. They get dropped into the operations via Valkyrie, and they don't know what to expect, which like led me to also not knowing what to expect. Expendable military operatives on an unimportant world doing operator things pretty much sums up the entire story. So, but like, don't let the fact that this is like the shortest summary and review kind of lead you to think I don't really care about it, or it's like I'm dismissing it. It's a very good story. It's just like incredibly simple. They show up, they kill things, there's world eaters. It's neat. I like it. If you do like simple, then this will be like dessert for you. The Convocation. So author Tammy Nichols, narrator Michael Geary. So the last time I read anything with Void Breachers having a perspective was a book called Requiem Infernal. Since the book is part of Warhammer Horror catalog, most probably haven't read Requiem Infernal, but it's okay. Now you know about it, and maybe you can read it. So it's like, it's not a bad story, but it's also not particularly memorable. And I'm not talking about Requiem Infernal. Now I'm talking about the Convocation. It's not a bad story, but it's also not particularly memorable. In a sentence, it's about a group of Void Breachers. They need to defend their ship, although they don't know whether the threat is from within or from without. So I don't want to go so far as to say it's mediocre, because that feels too strong a word. None of the characters rise to being something that I cared about, but the dialogue was decent. The descriptions of the ship in distress and something clearly not of this like world having happened is also really cool. I do like that there's a guy that they're looking for. He does end up showing up, because usually with these stories, there's like a guy they're looking for, and then they find his body, and they're like, he's dead, Jim. And then like that's just kind of like the author excuse for like, I don't have to describe what the story is, and then they get killed, and then you're just sitting there like, what did I just read? So yeah, like again, killing off characters is an easy way out of not giving information. They find the guy, and he's able to kind of elaborate on what's going on, and then the story continues even further, which is cool. It doesn't just end. Cold endings leave me cold and unfeeling. So I mean, it leaves me feeling annoyed and angry. So describe what's happening and actually end your story, not with everyone dies at the end. There's even like a well executed twist. So where does that leave the story? I think the best thing to do if you are going to read this is set your expectations. If you go in with no expectations, then it's like a fine addition to this anthology. If you go in with like, this is going to change my life, and I will never read an anthology the same again, then it's not. This story is going to be the worst thing you've ever read in your life. So just go in not really knowing what to expect and just enjoy it for what it is, and then move on. Like, Stealing Orphean. Richard Ford is the author, narrator Gabrielle Nellis Payne. So we start in an administratum facility with this one. A character by the name of Kata receives or serves as our eyes in the story. She's here to secure information for the Logos Historita Veritas. We do not see much of these guys. I wish we did more, but on the bright side, they do reprise pretty often with like the Indomitus era books, so like Archmagos and like the Dawn of Fire series, and like there's plenty of books where they do kind of show up, but you just don't see them like outside of like the main thrust of books, which is like I wish we got more information about. In the Dark Imperium trilogy, the first exposure we get to Gilliman's handmade order of historians is when one of them is able to like dig up a close to original version of Lorgar's Lectitio Divinitatis, which is like wild. There's a lot of potential for stories to be small enough, like in stakes, but uniquely able to explore and like flesh out some ill-explored aspects of the setting. I think one of the reasons that the historians aren't written about more often is because of how important mystery is to the setting of 40k. Clarifying everything would take away a lot of the mythical elements from the universe as a whole, and leave things feeling like smaller and more sterile. And like the more you explain the setting and the more you can explain the setting, the more you're kind of like, it's whatever. So I know I haven't spoken a lot about the actual story that I'm talking about, but it is a good story. It starts at the end and then kind of gets into the preceding events. Like I haven't seen that done in a minute, which it's cool. It's well executed. The hardest part of the story, or the hardest part of any story, is to get characters to be something you'll care about, and I think the story kind of achieved it by the very end. Seeing different artifacts and having their histories told was also pretty cool. So like all in all, neat story. Not amazing, not bad, worth the read. It's also short-ish, so there's that. Lessons of Rorphax by Callum Davis. Narrator Michael Geary. So Captain Abbas Bal Narath of the Tome Keepers, which is like an epic name. I love that so much. He tells his story of becoming a leader within his chapter. This is another standout story within this anthology. The format of the story told is clever. Basically, it's being told in a past tense way, and it's being written in the form of a journal entry rather than like a straight up linear tale. So it almost feels narrated at times, and at the end he leaves a postscript for those that come after him to like kind of learn from. Personally, I can relate to being like in a position of reluctant leader, so it got me engaged. Just kind of like the whole prospect, like the whole plot of this story, the theme and all that jazz. I was just kind of like, oh, I can engage with it because I kind of understand where he's coming from. Also getting exposed to like a new chapter of the Astartes is like always fun, especially the Tome Keepers. They're pretty cool. If I can find more of them, I will. But I have a feeling they only show up here. The descriptions of everything is a bit meh, but it's being told from the perspective of a Space Marine, and most of them aren't known for their like flowery language, barring probably like the Blood Angels and Lorgar's boys. But like I refuse to believe like an Iron Warrior is sitting there writing like incredible poetry. It also comes off as being pretty detached at times, even when events are currently happening, resulting in like and then this is happening style. Like I don't know, some of you might not have like know, but like the recommendation for like writers is to stay away from doing like the and then stuff, and then do like instead it's like therefore. So like basically avoid listing stuff off. Like for example, if somebody finds a knife, that doesn't mean in the next scene suddenly they have to stab somebody. It's just kind of like maybe they find a knife and then they put it in their bag, and then later in the story they're able to like pry open a door because they remember they have the knife in their bag or something like that. It's a therefore thing, not an and then thing. It's not like, oh, the door opened and then I went outside and then I got the mail and then I went back inside and then I ate breakfast. Like, probably don't do that. But anyways, the criticism I just made, it may be unavoidable since all of this is being written as having already happened and not like the other way around. This is him like writing a journal past tense about stuff that happened already. So the end then is probably just kind of like, you know, happenstance from the fact that he's like, and then I did this, and then this happened, and then this happened. So it does seem like I have been knocking on the story more than actually praising it after just having said like it's awesome. But like I'll leave off by repeating that it's definitely worth the 45 minutes it takes to like actually finish it. It's a really good story. I love it. Devilhunter. Woof. Author Nicholas Wolfe, narrator Michael Geary. So Mason is John Hunter and has become a Tau auxiliary when they offer him and his family a place within the Tau Va. Shasfari Taka is John Fire Warrior. John Hunter and John Fire Warrior, those are their names now. John Hunter and John Fire Warrior must track down a new form of Yahi, or Tyrannid, if you aren't Tau. I'm not going to lie, the summary review, like, hybrid thing that I've been doing is just going to be telling you exactly what happens, because this one, it's, like, not worth it, like, at all. Like, I won't even be like, well, it's up to you. Like, I'm on the fence. I'll leave it to you to decide. It's like, no. This one's, like, straight not good. So you've got, like, Devilhunters fully kitted out and given straight, like, the straightforward task, basically, of just, hey, man, hunt this Tyrannid. And they also give them a Kroot, like, so the Kroot, and then the gun drone, and then John Fire Warrior and John Hunter is, like, there to do the thing. It's supposed to be, like, a twist that the Kroot, like, ate Tyrannid. But, like, the problem is they give it away in, like, the very, very, very beginning of the story when John Hunter talks about a rumor he picked up from other Fire Warriors on the planet about some of the Kroot having, like, eaten Tyrannid. And then he gives, like, the Kroot, like, a side eye. He's like, and he's acting a little strange, isn't he? And then John Fire Warrior is like, pay not attention to other Fire Warriors, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, okay, well, great. He ate. Because, like, we just read a story. Like, it doesn't help that in this anthology alone, they had, like, the Forbidden Meal story. And that was literally a Kroot, like, eating a Tyrannid and then transforming into weirdness. So it's like, okay, cool, that's about to happen in this book or in this story, and then it does, and it's just like, there's no twist. So yeah, they tried to do a twist, and then there isn't one. So this small thing pretty much breaks the story's back, because like throughout the short story of like 50-ish minutes, the main obstacle they run into is the fact that this Tyrannid seems to be like always be 2 steps ahead of the Devilhunters. It knows where the traps get laid and like where the ambush is coming. John Fire Warrior blames John Hunter for being incompetent and giving away their position and like not laying the traps right, like relying on its gun drone and particularly the Kroot more and more as the story progresses. And then the end comes along with it, and turns out that like the Kroot, since it ate Tyrannid, it's able to be easily tracked by the Tyrannid they're hunting. And it was that which they were like being used, and not John Hunter's like gross incompetence. Like, it's not. It is bad. I wrote it's not bad by any means, but like, it is, because it's just the fact they gave away the twist. The twist is like the whole story. It relies on it. Like, if the twist was well executed, I'd be like, this is a great story, but it didn't, and it gave it away. So you had like this whole 50 minutes of just kind of like, I know exactly what's about to happen, and then it does, and you're like, all right, okay, I guess I'm a mind reader. So yeah, I don't know, like, it's well written in the aspect of like everything else works. It's just this one thing that like broke the story, because like the dialogue and the atmosphere and like the whole purpose and like the plot is unique. Everything else is, you know, because like it's not often we see like the hunting stories and all that jazz, and then it's just the plot, like the not the plot, the plot twist. Rough. Anyways, so that brings us to the end with like final thoughts. After 13 whole short stories filled with a variety of perspectives, we get to the end. to state the obvious, when it comes to an anthology, the thing you're looking for is that the good stories outnumber the bad stories. Anthologies are tricky because they are full of short stories, and short stories have especially in 40k, have the reputation of being like super forgettable or just like not good at all. Like there's exceptions. There are exceptions. Like the Crusade book, anthology has the ever so quoted anchorite story about like the word bearer dreadnought who turns out to blah blah blah, and then like you have the first lord of the Imperium with Malcador, that's only 30 minutes long, and like there's a few others I could name. There's the one with Celestine is awesome. It's, I almost don't even want to call it short. It's only 4 hours long, so it is a short story, but it's a longer short story than usual. But yeah, so like it's not always bad to read a short story in 40k, but like it is a lot of the time not great. So like yeah, anthologies are rough. But I will say the number of good ones to bad ones outnumber, which is great. There's like 7 good ones to like the 6 bad ones. In my opinion, Altar of Maws and 1 Million Years makes this anthology worth like just by itself. But also Lessons of Rorphax is also pretty great, and Eradicant is also pretty good. Like standout, I guess I should say, not just pretty good. Don't spend your credit on pretty good. Spend it on like actually worth it. So yeah, with that, we're good. We're at the end. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry it's been forever, but semester's over. Hopefully I'll get the next video out in the next like 2 or 3 days. I don't really do the Christmas thing, so I'm gonna kind of go heavy. I want to get like another 4 videos out before the next semester starts. And the next one is probably going to be Reign of Iron, because Iron Warriors are really cool, and I want more of them in my life. Yeah, anyway, have a good one. Merry holidays. See you in a few.